Good evening and welcome to Mental Health Matters After Hours with me, Dr Audrey Tang. My co-host is Judith Crosier, and today we look at all things mental health and well-being. Our guest today is a returning guest expert, Amy Lawrence. She is the host of the Pain into Power podcast, but her focus is not just on chronic pain, but on getting diagnosed. Because if you have ever experienced difficulty in getting a diagnosis or even a doctor's appointment, Amy understands what's going on. And also, she's raised the subject that if you're younger and your diagnosis or your symptoms don't seem to fit within a certain age bracket because they wouldn't be appropriate for people of that age to be getting this particular disease, that disease is not often considered. And so today we are going to be unpacking the difficulties of getting a diagnosis and the even harder difficulties of getting a diagnosis when people aren't expecting you to have that particular problem. Let's head over to the studio. Amy, it's great to chat with you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be back.
Oh, it's always lovely to talk with you because you have such a broad and different perspective of the healthcare system, and we really want to hear more. Because on our previous show, you shared your experience of living with chronic fatigue syndrome and how you help others. But we didn't have a lot of time to talk about something which is very significant to your own personal journey, because it has affected your mental health and it will resonate with so many people, and that is medical gaslighting. And if you don't mind, please could you tell us what you went through?
Just years and years of trying to prove that my symptoms are real. And it's so hard in terms of, looking young, looking fit and healthy, and doctors just not really believing that actually what I'm experiencing is very real.
That's horrible, because did you start questioning yourself just as a matter of interest? When these things happen, do you then start going, well, maybe I don't feel this, or maybe it's not that bad, or...
Truthfully, to be honest, I can even safely say to this day that there's still things that I question now. If I was to go to my GP today, from obviously previous experiences and negative experiences that I've had, I still wouldn't feel confident with going to them with certain symptoms. So I think that's the real importance of me being here today talking about this, because it doesn't just impact you up until you get diagnosed. It also impacts you ongoing. It's not just that it stops.
I think it's so scary that it still plagues you today. I think that's really, really sad. What do you think are some of the causes of the dismissal by GPs? Is it, because I know, and I'm not trying to excuse GPs, they do talk about feeling moral distress. They feel that they don't have time to see everybody, and so they feel themselves they're not giving the service that they want to give. But sometimes it's more than a lack of time. So what do you think, in your experience, are the key issues that practitioners need to be aware of?
I think it's being aware that somebody can look reasonably okay, they can look fine, and actually be experiencing pretty severe ongoing symptoms. And I think it's that invisibility aspect. Just because somebody, looks okay, or maybe a few of the things, I'm just thinking off the top of my head now of things that have been said to me, like I'd go to my GP and then a week later I'd return to the next appointment for a checkup and they'd say, oh, you look better this week. Because it's such a problem, because just because somebody looks maybe a little bit less tired, or it doesn't mean to say that their symptoms have disappeared or that they're all of a sudden all better now. So I think that invisibility aspect is huge. And again, a lot of women struggle with women's health issues and things like that, and invisible chronic pain. But it's also being young as well, I think, is a huge thing to mention, because we don't often think of illnesses as much when you're younger. I think it's becoming more of a thing now, where women are being more open about it and speaking about it, especially when it comes to the world of social media and online. But again, you can be any age and you can get anything at any age. It's not, not just something that happens when you're older, which I think is a really important point to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of leading on from what you said before, something that we've spoken about before was when you're dealing with somebody in authority and they're telling you something, and that means that you lose your voice. How do you deal with that? How do you recapture your own voice?
You know, I think it's so important to validate how you're feeling from the experiences that you're having, because this is not plain sailing. You know, it does impact somebody's not just physical health and the symptoms that they're experiencing, but their mental health as well. You know, so have a cry, break down, vent to people that feel safe and close to you, because it's not plain sailing, and it's hard. It is really, really hard to constantly feel gaslit, dismissed, or even like your complete reality is just non-existent to, you know, some of the experiences that I've had with GPs, like, oh, it's not that, or you're not experiencing that. Well, actually, I'm sat there and I'm telling you that I am experiencing that, and that can be honestly soul destroying when you're trying to get to the bottom of, you know, issues with your health and trying to get to a point where things are a little bit more manageable.
Just to interrupt you there, you saying that when somebody says to you, oh, you're not experiencing that. Now, to me, as a scientist, okay, psychology may or may not be classed as a science, but we were always trained to look for the anomaly. In any form of research, you are told, look for the slightly weird thing, because that might be significant. You might end up dismissing it at the end, but if something doesn't fit into the data, ask why. And that would be, you know, somebody who's young, who's experiencing X, Y, and Z when they probably ought not to be, or it's not common. Surely, to me, that would be a red flag.
Absolutely.
It's beyond me that
not something to be dismissed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
No, I totally agree. It's awful.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Can I just
please.
As well, if you're going back to the GP with ongoing symptom that's not getting better, I'm just thinking in terms of, I know in the past I spoke about chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia as two common, you know, conditions, but also in regards to other women's health conditions, like, for example, endometriosis is getting more, thankfully, more awareness, and, you know, women are speaking up more. But, you know, that can bring on so much pain, different types of pain, and also different symptoms, not just one symptom. So if someone's constantly going with, you know, painful periods or bowel symptoms, bladder symptoms, it's not just a case of saying, you know, oh, you just have IBS, or you just have, you know, constipation, or this is just a short bout of diarrhea. It's really important to get that specialist help so that things don't get worse as well. It's so important to just be heard and truly listened to.
Yeah. And I think you've highlighted one of the problems that we have with a lot of our medical system is that you do keep almost being dismissed with the easy option.
Yeah.
People don't have the time. I mean, I'm not, excuse it, there's systemic issues, but it's almost like, oh, well, here's the boxes.
Yeah.
Do you fit in that box or don't you? And I think that highlights beautifully, in fact, people not investigating further.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like you have to go 3 times with the same thing before they take you seriously.
Yeah,
you know, That's my experience. So we're often advised to take somebody with you to your appointment. So A, you don't forget everything that you're told, and B, that they might speak up for you. But it's not always practical if you don't want somebody listening to your, you know, your confidential symptoms, and also some people might not want to go with you, but in that situation, what would you say about that?
If you're experiencing ongoing, and, you know, we're talking going into years now, because I know how, you know, how difficult it can be to get answers. I actually would advise it. It's not something that I was actually open to many years ago, because I thought, God, who wants to sit and listen to me, you know, in each appointment and things. But actually, if you can find that safe person, or if you do have that one person that doesn't mind going to those things with you, and it might not even be that they go to every single appointment, it just might be that, you know, I'm finding this a bit much today, I can't believe I have to talk about this again, or try and explain my symptoms again to a new professional, I think that can really help. And actually, the plus side to that is somebody else can sometimes speak for you if you're like, God, I don't even know what to say anymore, because it can get to that point. It really, really can. And they can just be a bit of a spokesperson for you in terms of, actually, this is really impacting Amy, or sometimes just explaining in a little bit more detail of how much it can be truly impacting someone's life, which again can sometimes, not all the time, help with, just making it clear to, I think, GPs especially. I keep going back to GPs because sometimes, I was explaining this to a friend the other day, I was like, sometimes it can feel like, when you're trying to get past security in an airport.
Yes.
I feel like, I just need to get to the next step, but I'm just get past this bit. So that's how I explain it sometimes, which, seeing the funny side a little bit. But yeah, it can just be really helpful to have that person there, really. And I've actually read a little bit about having men in an appointment for like a women's health issue, can be, which I think is interesting.
That's interesting.
I've been up about that a little bit more and seeing people post about it, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. And I'm actually really glad you shared your own concerns, because I think sometimes when we prepare questions, they come from our own concerns, because I sit there and, exactly like you said, I don't want to bring someone in and talk about my personal situations or symptoms in front of them. And who would want to come with me, kind of thing. And it's really nice to hear that actually people are more open to it and far more mature than I think I must have them in my own head. No, this is a really helpful conversation, Amy. You're staying with us, and we'll be back just after these tips from our other guest experts.
Because when people come to us, at least as a doctor, when patient comes to the doctor office, they come with their symptoms. And sometimes they even struggle to explain what the symptoms are. So we need some time to talk it through, understand what's the dynamic at home, what's going on. There's more to it than just that specific thing. And when we give you give the time to talk and really understand what's going on, you start to see the underlying issues. And with the 10-minute time frame, we mainly just give everybody paracetamol and ibuprofen. I've heard that so many times. People just go to the A&E and go back with just a prescription for that. And it's really frustrating. And when you actually, like in my case, like I'm working with women trying to lose weight, they come to me saying, I want to lose weight because I don't like my body appearance. I want to change my appearance physically. And when we start to talk about it, we realize there's a lot more going on. And then by session 2 or 3, we're focusing on building self-esteem, building healthier coping mechanisms. We're talking about completely the shift in our focus changes completely.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters After Hours. We're talking with Amy Lawrence. She is a podcaster and she hosts the Pain into Power podcast. She also is a coach and works with people with chronic pain. And this is one of the most important conversations we've been having with you, Amy, because we've been talking about medical gaslighting. We've been talking about how difficult it can be to get a diagnosis, especially when you don't seem to fit the boxes that our system likes to use. As a coach and a podcaster, people are going to share their own stories with you. How often do you see these similar stories, similar experiences of medical gaslighting taking place, and how has it presented for other people that you've supported?
I think it's just the time it takes to be truly heard. And I know everyone presents with different symptoms, right? And they can impact you in different ways, but you have to go through so many kind of like loopholes and to get to a point where you have an answer, and it can just be so tricky. And I always think back to my own experiences and particularly times of struggle, to say the least. And it's that time where there's no support that's so important so people don't feel so alone, and so that they think there is some hope or light at the end of this, or things can somewhat get better, even if, you know, it's not completely better and back to how your normal was before. It's just having that little bit of hope, I think. And unfortunately, that might not come from, you know, a health professional in terms of a GP or a consultant. Often it comes from lived experience, actually, of being able to relate to somebody.
I think this is the sad part, actually, because what you're talking about is when you're in pain anyway, you get isolated because you don't want to go out, you don't want to do these things, and then you have all those other worries of, well, who's going to want to come with me to appointments? Then you go to the appointment, and then that pushes you even further back in that hole that you are not digging for yourself, you're just sinking further and further into, and I think that's just scary and hard and difficult to deal with. And sort of relating to that, because you're saying it's taking people years to get diagnoses. There are only so many second opinions you can ask for. How do you find that energy to keep going when you keep getting told, well, that doesn't usually happen, it can't be that, you know, etc.?
It can be really hard, like you mentioned, you know, trying to keep going with something that you feel like you're not really getting anywhere or nobody's listening. This can be really helpful. So just thinking of my own experiences and things, this is where things like support groups can be really, really helpful. You know, talking to people with similar symptoms. Again, protecting your mental health, though, in terms of, you know, listening to other people's stuff can be tricky when you're going through your own. So just having some boundaries in place there. But again, you know, if you're having a tricky day, or you're having a day where you simply think to yourself, God, I can't go on any longer with this, because those days do happen, especially quite frequently when you're in the depths of it. Just popping in these groups and being like, gosh, you know, I'm having such a difficult day. And then you get all these comments, you know, that are telling you you're not alone, or, you know, just talking about different experiences from other people. And it's that relatability. It's going back to that, being able to relate to somebody. And like you said, chronic pain and ongoing chronic pain can lead to a lot of isolation. So luckily these days we do have social media. So, you know, support groups can be a bit of a lifeline for people.
Yes, and I think this is one case where social media has been really, really helpful, with people speaking more about what's going on, and us looking at them going, exactly as we have this issue with, you don't look ill, oh my goodness, you're going through it. But the more you can see that and recognise that, the more curious I think we become as people. How did you take care of your own mental health whilst you were dealing with what I can only call bureaucracy?
You know, I still have to look after my mental health ongoing. You know, there's things that I have to still go to GP about. There's still specialists that I see. And you really do, you know, just anything that can help you. I'm into journaling at the moment, you know, writing things down, getting it out on paper, or even the notes app on your phone, you know, because energy can be such a big thing for people with, and women with, chronic pain and ongoing symptoms. So just anything that might help you to protect and look after your mental health, because, you know, both can coexist. It's not just, you know, this is your physical health and this is your mental health. They both intertwine, and it's so important to look after both. And actually it's not uncommon to start struggling more with your mental health because you have a physical health problem.
And journaling is such a good thing as well, because if you're also talking about documenting your symptoms and things like that, you've got something in written evidence as well, which can make a difference when you go and speak to the GP. But
that's a really good point.
That ongoing, we don't think actually that when somebody's got a physical diagnosis that they actually have extra mental health issues to deal with as well, because I think you mentioned on the previous show you just don't trust your body anymore, and then you can't understand, why are you not working for me, because it used to be fine, and that's a hard thing to grieve.
It is. If you sort of have to accept that you're not as you used to be, and maybe you might not be again, that's really tough, isn't it? Yeah. Absolutely. And obviously, as time goes on, and you've had to unfortunately battle GPs and your condition, you do become a bit of an expert in your own condition and your own symptoms. So how do you deal then with being dismissed or being gaslit when you do know what you're talking about, you do know what you're experiencing?
You know, the one thing I'd say to that is just don't give up. Truthfully, just don't give up. You know, if you even get a second opinion, a third opinion, a fourth opinion, and you're still not happy, keep going. And you know, what's the saying? I used to be into, you know, obviously a lot of the fitness world sayings, shall we say, because obviously my background is training. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Just keep going, truthfully. And I think those words definitely can be so relatable when it comes to ongoing chronic symptoms, and especially chronic pain. It wears you down. It really, really does. And you've got to find ways to keep going. And it's hard. It's hard to be upbeat when you've got this almost feeling, you know, that you're being beaten down every day. Because so, yeah, just finding ways to keep going can be really, really important. And that might be different for everybody.
Well, yes, it probably is. And can you share any of your own experiences about kind of getting success in your getting treatment for your conditions?
I'd say my relentless ability to just not back down. And, you know, I think I've seen every GP in the GP practice. And it makes you feel like you're going crazy, actually. It makes you think, gosh, well, if one GP is saying this and then another one's saying similar, well, maybe I'm the problem. And this is where a lot of the self-blame comes in with chronic pain, and that's how it can start to really affect your ways of thinking. And unfortunately, I hate to say it because I wish it wasn't the way that things were, a lot of my positive experiences have actually come from private care, which I know, again, is a huge problem because not everybody can afford to go private. And luckily, things are starting to change in terms of they're doing things like payment plans and things now, so it's not such a barrier for people to access. But yeah, I think that says it all in terms of the way that the healthcare system is, in terms of you have to go private to be heard and listened to. And sometimes that can just be the difference of having a specialist opinion and getting past the GP, basically. But that's kind of my experience, truthfully, is going private, unfortunately, which I hate to say, but it's just the truth.
No, and I'm actually grateful to you for saying that and being honest about that, because actually you're not the only one to say that.
No.
And that is a much more damning statement on the system than anything else. Why is it we have to pay the same doctor, the same doctors to get treatment that we actually need and want and should be available on the NHS?
That we're also paying for.
It's
not that it's free.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh my goodness. No, so thank you for saying that. We are keeping Amy, and we'll be back just after these tips from our guest experts.
Because when people come to us, at least as a doctor, when patient comes to the doctor office, they come with their symptoms. And sometimes they even struggle to explain what the symptoms are. So we need some time to talk it through, understand what's the dynamic at home, what's going on. There's more to it than just that specific thing. And when we give you give the time to talk and really understand what's going on, you start to see the underlying issues. And with the 10-minute time frame, we mainly just give everybody paracetamol and ibuprofen. I've heard that so many times. People just go to the A&E and go back with just a prescription for that. And it's really frustrating. And when you actually, like in my case, I'm working with women trying to lose weight. They come to me saying, I want to lose weight because I don't like my body appearance. I want to change my appearance physically. And when we start to talk about it, we realize there's a lot more going on. And then by session 2 or 3, we're focusing on building self-esteem, building healthier coping mechanisms. We're talking about completely the shift in our focus changes completely.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters After Hours, where we're having a really interesting discussion with Amy Lawrence, who is a pain coach and has her Pain into Power podcast. And we're talking about, well, struggles with being gaslit and dismissed with chronic. Exactly.
It's wrong. It really shouldn't be happening. They're the people who are trained to be compassionate and listening and curious and all of those positive things.
Exactly, and it's a great discussion, but it's one, like you say, we shouldn't really be having to have. So, talking about gaslighting, when we're gaslit, especially when you are ill or in pain or both, what does that do to us?
Oh, again, this is going back to the mental health aspect. It just wears you down. You're thinking, am I going crazy after a while? You're thinking, well, maybe it's not that, maybe it's this, and maybe it is just anxiety, and maybe it is just IBS symptoms, or maybe my pain isn't real and it is all in my head. And it really does start to affect your perception of what you're actually truly experiencing. And I think it can be so harmful, actually. Fair to use that word, harmful, because you just want to be validated, actually. And I think that's the difference. When we previously spoke about private care, often you're validated pretty much straight away, and you're like, this is real. And just to hear those 3 words, this is real, what you're experiencing is real, can have more of an impact than anybody could ever know, especially when you have dealt with chronic symptoms and chronic pain for so long. So yeah, the mental health aspect, and I've never really truly shared this with someone, but I can safely say with hand on my heart that I've experienced suicidal thoughts. I can say that I've experienced suicidal pain, actually, and I think health professionals should be more aware of what they say can make somebody feel, and how that can make them think, and what it can make them think in terms of, if you feel like you've got no hope, what have you got to hold on to? Or, the thoughts of this is never going to get better, you are going to start thinking those thoughts, and unfortunately people do, and it's really incredibly hard.
Just to pick up on 2 things you said there. One is the thought that it was never going to get better because people don't believe you and therefore not helping you. One of the things that contradicts so much of the positive psychology that's out there, that's all about, okay, how will this matter in a year's time and so on, which I think is really helpful for practical crises. But you're actually saying that's not open to you.
No.
That thought is not open to you, because what you're thinking is, in a year's time, I'm going to be in more pain, and I'm still not going to be believed.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you said, and you're absolutely right to call it harmful, because you said one of the things it makes you think is it just anxiety? Now, in today's world, anxiety, depression, they're massive, and yet it's made somebody who is going through something so physical go, oh, is it just anxiety? That's even sadder.
Yeah, it's awful.
Because even if it is anxiety, that's pretty big.
But it's quite surprising about the number of GPs that will straight away say, oh, are you anxious? Have you been going through a stressful time?
And dismissing anxiety. Are you anxious?
Yeah.
Head on one side.
Yeah. Yes, exactly that.
So you've got to think, of course you're anxious, you're in pain.
Yeah.
Of course, exactly.
But stop focusing on the mental aspect, because, if I was to, sit here and say to you all of the things that have been said to me in terms of medical gaslighting, you just think, how can you even say that to someone when they're coming back to you in pain? There was times where I was going to the GP every single week, because I just couldn't cope. Please help me. It was literally like pure despair and hopelessness, as if to be like, I just need to be out of this pain. To then be, met with, are you sure it's not just anxiety? You get angry, you do. You start to really feel anger towards it, because you just think, within your medical training, did you not have, and if you become a doctor, you're not supposed to be compassionate and have some sort of empathy, even if you can't truly understand what somebody is experiencing. And I think I say it all the time, and there might be a question coming up about this, but I say, like, there needs to be additional training for chronic health conditions, because it's completely different to treating an acute problem. So different.
Well, yes, that kind of was leading on to my next question, which was, how can we get healthcare professionals to understand the impact that their dismissive way is having on us?
I don't think this is actually anything tricky. I've mentioned about, additional training, which I think is absolutely brilliant for them to relate to what women and people with chronic health conditions truly experience every day. But actually, I'm starting to think, listening to the people that actually suffer, the people that have lived experience, and then combining that, yes, with your professional expertise, but also listening to lived experience. I think that is the way forward. And, social media, everybody's becoming more confident, I guess, or finding the confidence to speak up and open up about things, which I think is great in a way, but it just needs to kind of transfer into the real world, if you like, in terms of when you do go to visit your GP, or you do have that conversation with a health professional, because again, the opposite is just so harmful. You need to listen, and somebody needs to feel truly listened to and validated in what they're experiencing.
And so on that, how would you encourage somebody to, or empower somebody to use their voice more? Because I know, even at my age, when I sit in front of the nurse, I'm still always a bit, oh, you're going to tell me what to do. And, and I have the problem, and I speak up a lot generally. How do we do that when we're in that situation? Is it as simple as just having a list of, something on paper, an agenda on paper, or something like that?
It can be really tricky, can't it? Because I understand what you're saying in terms of they're the authority, aren't they? So you're opposite the GP or consultant or health professional, and you're thinking what they say goes.
Yes.
It's a partnership. They need to listen to what the patient is experiencing, and then the communication needs to be different, I think, in terms of the wording and what they say. Because, like I've said previously, how something is said makes all the difference. So I can give you an example of that. One pain consultant within the NHS said to me, this is just how it is, you're just going to have to learn to live with it. I was like, on the receiving end of that, I was like, my heart's sinking. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how's that even going to happen? And then you've got another pain consultant who is private, unfortunately. We should be entitled to quality care within the NHS. And he's saying, you absolutely cannot live like this. Just that difference in wording is like, oh, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel validated, and I actually can't live like this.
Yeah.
You're met with a completely different conversation, and it feels different within your body and how your brain thinks. You're thinking, gosh, someone's actually taken on board what I'm actually saying and experiencing here.
It's almost like someone is sharing the burden you're carrying. Yes. It's, when you have somebody that says, no, you have to. But also, worse still, when you're talking about somebody who's young, to have someone say, oh, well, that's just it now, you just have to live with it. You're now thinking, what? The next 60, 70 years of my life I have to live with this. That's awful. I mean, I'm not saying it's any better for someone who's 50, but that's outrageous. And I'm really sad to hear that that's been your experience. I think it says a lot of horrible things about the healthcare profession, really.
It does.
Where can we learn more about you and follow you and listen to your podcast?
So I'm on social media, so Instagram. I'm diving into TikTok a little bit, kind of going through that at the moment, trying to figure that out. So, and then you'll find the link to my podcast over on my social media platforms. So yeah, go and have a listen.
Amazing. We will keep Amy for Test the Trend. So for Test the Trend, we are lucky. We've got a little treat. Amy is going to give us a couple of those somatic exercises to get us a little bit more connected with our bodies, something really important, because that's how we begin to understand our symptoms and so on. And you can see we're sitting up a little bit straighter. I'm going to pass it over to Amy.
So it can be really difficult to be in your body, especially with a lot of discomfort and a lot of ongoing chronic symptoms within their nature. So sometimes just simple movements can be really, really helpful, and especially if you're in a bit of a loop with your thoughts as well, just to kind of get yourself out of a bit of a negative spiral. So very, very simply, you know, just placing your hand on your chest, you know, and becoming more present within your body, and just having that slight self-touch can be really quite comforting, just knowing that, you know, you are safe. Sometimes, you know, pain and horrible symptoms can make us feel unsafe in our bodies, actually. And sometimes it can be about reminding ourselves that we're not in danger, so to speak. And again, just bringing in some of the breath for awareness as well. Taking an inhale through your nose, into your stomach, feeling the chest rise, and then breathing out slowly and gently. And just noticing how something so small, actually, not a big movement or anything drastic, can just make you feel that little bit different. We're not looking for better or a cure or anything like that. It can just make you feel a little bit different within yourself.
I think that's beautiful. And actually, because we teach deep breathing a lot, having the hand to your chest makes a massive difference.
It's very grounding, isn't
Yeah,
it?
really comforting.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thanks.
much. I should switch my mic back on as well. Thank you so much, Amy. It's just been, as always, such a pleasure to talk with you. I wish we weren't still having to have this sort of conversation, because it really shouldn't be happening these days. But I'm really grateful to you for giving us your voice and sharing your experiences. And we hope to see you back on the show again in the new year.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
I love chatting with Amy.
She's so lovely, isn't she?
Really real.
Really real, and just she just talks about her experiences with such humility as well.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, and that's actually, it's a lovely energy.
Yeah, really lovely.
There's
really
no
lovely.
anger, although I know we're talking about something that makes me angry.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of acceptance without sort of losing the fact that things were bad.
Yeah, exactly. She's very real.
The point about private help, that it really makes me cross, because I just think we don't have a private system. That's not how we're set up. Other countries do, and it works, and I get that.
Yeah.
But it feels a bit like false advertising in the UK. It's like we've got this lovely NHS that does all of this stuff. Oh, actually, no, it doesn't. When you actually go into there, you don't get the treatment you're after. I'd almost rather, and I know this is going to probably cause controversy, but have a system like Singapore whereby, yes, there is the very basic level of care, which is free, but then you are encouraged to pay for the highest level of care that you can afford. They have 5 tiers.
Well, I agree, and I've never been to Singapore, but I've been to France a lot. And anyone that knows me and how clumsy I am won't be surprised to know I've experienced hospitals and doctors a lot in France. And it's so easy. You make an appointment, you go, there's barely anyone waiting. Yeah. You have to pay. But it's not a fortune. But I would much rather we adopted that here, because you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And it's probably €20 now, an appointment, which isn't huge. But you're seen that day, and you get really good treatment.
The French system, I've heard experiences of friends who've moved to France. One of them had a hip operation, and they sent a physio every single day to her house to inject her with anything that she needed to have. Another one, their neighbours, it was a brain tumor, something quite big.
Oh, wow.
He had to have treatment pretty much around the clock, so they moved his family into a little flat near the hospital so he could just have his treatment for that duration that he needed to have that extra care. That's France.
It's human, isn't it? It's human, it's humane, it's how the world should be. It's I feel like if we have something wrong with us here, it's an annoyance.
Yeah. or it's a postcode lottery
Yeah.
as to whether you get the right doctor who
Yes.
actually cares about it or wants to do it. But yeah, my experience of private care has been a lot better,
Of course.
sadly, which is exactly what Amy's saying.
Yeah.
But that's my point about false advertising. I don't mind it being rubbish if we just go around going, it's a bit rubbish.
I know. And it's such a shame, isn't it? Because the people that work in the NHS, it's not the people,
No,
it's
not.
the system. And you said that earlier, it's systemic, and it's something is just fundamentally wrong with it.
And the other thing is about raising your voice. Now,
Yeah.
I know it's much harder when you're young. I
Yes,
think
it is.
It's also, I think, hard when you're older because you're used to the doctors knowing everything. It's exactly the same as said. There's an authority figure, and you behave in that way. But I remember when my dad was in hospital, he would complain to me all the time. Then the doctor would come round, and he'd be, "I'm fine," and I would be there and say, "But you're not, Dad, are you?"
Yeah.
And then I would look the doctor in the eye and say, "Right, this is what's going on," and that's where I think having somebody there to just back you up.
Yeah.
Help.
Yes, and I've done that with elderly people. Not my mum. My mum's perfectly capable of
Good for her.
speaking her mind. So that's fine. But other kind of relations, because they get into a doctor's surgery and then everything falls out of their head. They can't remember what they want to say.
Yeah.
And they don't feel that they have got the right to speak to someone in authority with their own authority, and it's really sad.
And then white coat syndrome. It's real.
It's a real thing.
Well, it either means you go to the white coats and your blood pressure shoots up, or alternatively, you go to the white coats. Oh, I'm feeling much better now. You've wasted 3 weeks for the appointment. You go and I'm fine. And the problem is. Now we're getting a lot more, this is in the UK, but we're getting a lot more triaging over the phone.
Yes.
Which I don't think, unless you're in front of people, they can't prod you and poke you. I know when I went privately to get it was GERD, it was gastric reflux. He was prodding and poking, and I'm just like, yeah, it's painful there. Oh, it's not painful there. Then he was able to go, right, it's not what you think it is with Dr. Google. It's this.
Yeah.
But without that,
You can't do that over the phone. No.
we used to, not joke because it's not funny, say in psychology or psychiatry, psychiatrists are the only people who diagnose and prescribe without looking at the actual brain itself.
Well, yes.
But now, doctors are doing this. They're not looking at the actual problem. They're just looking at you through a screen, going, describe your problem, which you're not going to do very well.
No, absolutely. And even sometimes when you go to a physical GP, sometimes they don't even examine what you want them to because they assume it's something else or I don't know. It's difficult. It's a difficult one.
To wind that in, we need to give some advice as to what might be useful to do in a medical context. And I would say, now COVID's over, take someone with you. I think that is important.
Yeah.
We've both been on the supporting end of that,
yeah.
and I think it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Write it down. Write down all of the things that you want to say, because when you get into the GP, if you're not feeling those things, at least you can remember what they are, and you don't get pulled off track, and you can come back to it every time, and at worst, just go, here's all the symptoms.
Yeah.
So I'd say write things down as well would be another thing. Any other thoughts that maybe would help, or anything that could be useful?
I think those two things are really important, but just from personal experience, I would say just trust your gut. Not literally, but trust your own instincts. And it works the other way around as well. Probably 20 years ago, excuse me, I was diagnosed with something, and I absolutely said, I don't have that, I don't have it, and I had to have this really strong medication, and I refused to take it. And I was I was probably late 20s, and they rang my mum bring her in, she's got to take this medication. Anyway, very long story short, fast forward 20 years later, I never had the condition. And so anyway, my point is trust your instincts, whether you think you have something, whether you think you don't have something.
Yes, brilliant.
Always.
You know your body best.
Yeah, just fight for yourself.
And keep saying that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if you've got experiences you'd like to share with us, please leave us a comment. But otherwise, from us all here at Mental Health Matters, have a good night.